Begin the card Daf Mesechta Yoma Daf begin 13 lines down from the top of the Amid. The Gemara continued the discussion from the previous Daf, and we're discussing here regarding if Tumas Hutra B'tzibur, or Dechuya B'tzibur. We came into the discussion regarding when Mafrishin Kain Gadol Mibeisai, that we're concerned for the Tumah that is from Mibeisai, we're not concerned from other people, which got into discussion, because even if he's going to have Tumas Mes, but we say Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, we say it's okay, we're not concerned. Versus the Manda Amar who said that no, even if you say Dechuya, but it's considered Musad Le'Shchicham, that is the discussion we're having regarding, we showed that it's a Machlekes Tanoim, if Tumah Hutra or Dechuya, the Gemara continues on that theme. She's Kuzman because of Chesed Daf Hashem is joining us for today's Daf. So we're discussing today's Daf, like we said, the Gemara continues this discussion regarding Tumah Hutra B'tzibur or Dechuya B'tzibur. Further details about when and why we separate and sprinkle the Paraduma water on Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippurim and the Kohen who burns the Paraduma. The reason for the name of the area where the Kohen Gadol stays during the week before Yom Kippur, and some of the key terms and concepts are, like we said, Tumah Hutra B'tzibur means to say that it's totally permitted. You don't even have to go out of your way to try to do it in the state of Tahara. Versus Tumah Dechuya B'tzibur is a concept that it's set aside, but it's a b'diavad, you'd rather try to do it in the state of Tahara. Hazah is the sprinkling of the Paraduma waters in the purification process from Tumah. Tefillah B'zman Mitzvah is the concept that you try to do it in the first opportunity when you become tahar, then you're supposed to do the tefillah and you're not supposed to delay it. Is the Issa Mechikas Hashem, which the Torah says you're supposed to obliterate the Avodah Zarah. Don't do the same thing to Hashem your God, which is the Issa of erasing God's name. The halacha of Shvus, which is the Issa Drabanan, on Shabbos, Demai is when one buys produce from Am Aretz, it's Damai. What is this? You're not sure did he take off Chumas and Maisa or not. Which by the halacha is by Tevel, there's supposed to take off Chumas, which that's around 1/50, it goes to the Kayan. Maisers is then 1/10 is given to the Levi, which again that's Chuma Gedayla. For the Kayan, Meiser Rishon is what goes to the Levi. Chumas Meiser is then a tenth of that tenth goes to the Kayan. Meiser Sheni is and then a second type that the Yisrael takes off, he eats it in Yerushalayim. And Meiser Ani is in the 3rd and the 60th of the Shemitah cycle, is that goes to the Ani. And the last concept is Mitzvah Mechaber L'Araya is that if someone wants to collect from you, the onus of proof is on him. So like we said, we continue this discussion regarding Tumah Hutra B'tzibur or Dechuya B'tzibur. So the Gemara says, Name Mahani Tanoim, again with 13 lines down with the top of the Amar on Chesed and Aleph. Let's say these Tanoim that we brought in the previous Daf, Machlekes Reb Shimon Yehuda, if the Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur or Dechuya B'tzibur, does it get just merely set aside like b'diavad, or is it even like a tchila totally permitted? It's kind of like the following Tanoim, the time like learning the Brisa. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh, both by before Yom Kippurim and the Kohen who burns the Paraduma, Mazel of Kol Shiva. We spray him those waters for all the 7 days. We said both of them are Mafrish and Shivas Yomim beforehand. And this time the whole is that we spray him all the 7 days. From all the, as we said, that they would collect a little bit of all the Paradumas that they would burn, leave a little bit in the Beis HaMikdash. Divri Meir says all 7 days we sprayed both the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur and the Kohen before he burnt the Paraduma. B'Yisrael says no. Only day 3 and day 7 of when you started quarantining the Kohen or the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, that's only days you would spray him, not all 7 days, days 3 and day 7. The Gemara is going to explain later on his opinion. He says, actually he differentiates. He says, Kohen is a part of the Kohen that burns the Paraduma, Mazal Kol Sheva, him we spray all 7 days. Kohen Yom Kippurim, the week before Yom Kippurim, by him you only spray him day 3 and day 7, not all 7 days. But first the Gemara wants to say regarding the first two Tanoim, my lab malkin biflagi, isn't this the dispute in this Bryce and the same thing as the Machlekes we have in the previous Daf? And that is Remeir Savar, Remeir held this, that he says you have to go ahead and both the Kohen Gadol and that Kohen who burns the party, if they burn them all 7 days, because he holds Tumah Dechuya B'tzibur, he holds the Tumah and merely set aside when you have that problem in the Tzibur. So therefore, really you need to have a totally tahar situation, because you don't really want to have Tumah even if it's B'tzibur, because it's merely Dechuya, it's merely set aside. Oh, so that's why we understand that you have to spray him in the designated time when he's able to become tar. What does this mean? So Rashi explains, this is the thrust of the sugya over here, that every single day you're in doubt, is this day 3 of when he became tamei? Oh, every one of the first 3 days, we quarantine him a week before. Why? Because we're not sure if he's tamei. So we don't know, did he become tummy a second before we quarantine him? Did he become tummy a day before, 2 days before? So every one of the first 3 days might be day 3 of when he became Tameh, which when a person's Tameh, he's supposed to spray day 3 and day 7 of when he became Tameh, and then he becomes Tar from whatever Tameh he had of Tumah's mess. So the first 3 days might be the day 3, and the last 3 days, every single day, might be day 7. So that's why you have to spray him every one of the 7 days, because it might be day 3 or day 7. First 3 days might be day 3, last 3 days might be day 7. For example, let's say he became tummy a moment before you quarantined him, and he's there for 7 days. So day 3 is day 3, so that's the first opportunity you get to spray him. We're going to be matar him, and day 7 you're going to spray him again. Let's say a day before he became tummy, so when's day 3? Day 2 of his separation. Let's say 3 days before, so day 1 is going to be his, and then you're going to have later on the last 3, that day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7 is going to be possibly day 7. So that's why you have to spray him every single day, because just in case we got to get the right days of spraying him. Whereas Rabbi Yossi held that no, only day 3 and day 7, because he was Tumah after he betzibur. Tumah is totally permitted regarding the tzibur. So we're not stringent, it's just a mile balmo, which we learn off in the Milum, as we said on the previous stuff. But Malum they spray, they also spray, so we're going to do the bare minimum, which is just as a token of like elevated status, day 3, day 7. But there's no real necessity of being mataher the person, because we don't need tahara. Tuma is hutri but tzibur. So isn't that the machlekes of Shem Yehuda, the same machlekes we have over here, regarding if the kohanim, before they do the avodah regarding the tzibur, do you have to go out and do every single day, or is enough just a token day 3, day 7? It seems to be machlekes if Tumah Dechuya or Tumah Hotri B'tzibur, which the Gemara rejects and says, V'tizbur, is this a raya? Is this logical? First of all, Isav Rabbi Yossi had to he B'tzibur. If you need to say Rabbi Yossi, who says you do the spraying day 3, day 7 hold, Tumah is Hutri, is totally permitted B'tzibur, Hazal Klal Amhali. Why do you need to do even day 3 and day 7, which seems to be coming in the concept of day 3, day 7, if you became tummy from a mess, so we're going to purify you with the paraduma waters. What tumah? Who cares? Tumah hutri b'tzibur. Why do I even need to do day 3 and day 7? You tell me you're not doing according to Rabbi Yossi every one of the 7 days. Good. But why doing day 3, day 7? It's unnecessary. So the Gemara says, I can tell you the cool alma that everyone holds, that Hani Tanoi Savi, that these Tanoim, what they hold, is tumah duchuyi b'tzibur. That actually, they all hold like Rabbi Shimon. The tumah is merely set aside. It's not hutcher, because again, if it was hutcher, no one would be saying any spraying whatsoever. So everyone holds is dechuya. So, then what are they disagreeing about? If it's not between Rabbi Shimon and Yehuda, if it's not about hutcher or dechuya, everyone holds is dechuya. So what's the machlekes? I'll tell you. The mayor holds that you have to spray every single one of the 7 days. It's because Arminan Tvila Bizman Mitzvah. We say that immersing yourself to be matar yourself in the exact time when you first could is a mitzvah. And we know this from passing by Midbar Yatas, which says V'chita b'yem hashvi. You purify him on day 7, and he washes his garments, and then he washes himself. Now, the pasuk's only coming to teach you that the tevilah, that the immersion should be on day 7. And Tracy goes through how do you see this? But why are you telling me v'chita b'yem hashvi? I already said that you have to spray the person 7th day. The reason why it's repeating is to tell you that the tevilah is on day 7. Now, the hazah, and the Gemara is actually going to discuss this shortly, but the hazah, the spraying with the paraduma waters, we compare to tevilah to say that it's a mitzvah to do it in the time. Oh, so therefore every single day we spray him because maybe today's the day. We don't know. We don't know if it became tummy. Maybe it was today, maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was the day before. So every single day we got to do it bismana, to go ahead and just cover our bases just in case. So again, everyone holds this techuya. It's just merely set aside. The question is, Remeir holds that tevilah bismana is mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi Saba, he who holds you only spray him day 3, day 7, is because mitzvah. We don't say that doing it in the right time, so to speak, is a mitzvah. And you could do it whenever you want to. So therefore, even though it's maybe already day 5 or day 6, we don't care. We're doing 3 and 7 now. And it's not a problem. It says V'chita, so that the Gemara in Kedushin of and the 3rd paragraph of someone else learns that for something else. So that's what their machlekes is. The machlekes is, do you say, everyone holds it's dechuya, it's merely set aside, so of course that's why you have to be sprayed, because we don't want to have tumah. Question is, do you have to get it, mamish, on that first opportunity? Is bismana, is that a mitzvah or not? According to Meir it is, so you got to get every single day just in case, that's day 3, that's day 7. According according to Rabbi Yossi, there's no requirement. But the Gemara rejects this, however. Is that really so? As you're explaining now, that Rabbi Yossi is the one who holds that toiveling in the right time is not a mitzvah, but Tanya. We learned in the Brisa the following halacha, and that from there we'll see that he actually holds that it is a mitzvah, because the Brisa says this. Someone had the name of God written on his flesh. He had Hashem's name written on his body. So the halacha is, he's not allowed to go and bathe himself, because he's not allowed to erase God's name. And we know that you're not allowed to erase God's name, because it says in Daf Yomi, you're supposed to obliterate the name of a David Zar. And it says right there, don't do the same thing to Hashem. So, he's not allowed to bathe himself. He's not allowed to smear himself. He's not allowed to stand in a smelly place. You have a Shem Hashem, Shem Havaya. Now, what happens if there's definitely tefillah shel mitzvah? But what happens if he has a mitzvah in, like it was in biblical times, people go and they would matar themselves, mishneg times, they have an obligation to go and table yourself, you're a zav, whatever it is, the Torah says you have to go and table yourself. What do you do then? So then, you wrap around a reed around the name of Hashem to protect it from the water getting to it, but table, and then he tables himself. Rabbi Yossi, he says, no, he says you're right. Of course, that if you had a reed readily available, of course he would hold also that you would wrap it around with a reed. But let's say you don't have one. So he said, Yerid v'table kedarka. You go and you immerse yourself, you put your hand over the name of Hashem, and you table in the regular way. But as long as you don't scrub yourself, as long as you don't actively erase God's name, you go and you table that yourself. Now, in time along, and we explained this halacha in Masechta Shabbos of Kavchav Amud Beis. The Gemara has all arichas there, but ultimately the betfila bezman mitzvah kamefagi. That what is the machlekes in the Rabbana and Rabbi Yossi? If you go and you have to find a reed to cover the Shem Hashem, or do you just go in the normal way? Is exactly regarding the concept of is toiveling in the right time a mitzvah or not? The Tanakh held lo yimrin tefila bezman mitzvah. We don't say toiveling in the right time is a mitzvah. So you got to find a reed. I don't care if it takes you a week to find one. Whatever it is, you don't have to table today. Torah says you have to table as a zav, whatever, you have to matar yourself. Okay, Guy Morgan, go the day after, but find a reed, because you can't have the name of God being erased in the water. Rabbi Yossi Savar, he holds Amrina Tefillah B'zman Mitzvah. No, tabling in the right time, the first opportunity that you have to be able to table is a mitzvah. Oh, so that's why he holds table Kedarkai, because maybe you're not going to find a reed, and you can be zichin, you missed it already. It's already the next day. So he said, no, we want you to fulfill the mitzvah of toiveli bizmanai. Don't go looking for a reed. Do it with your hand. Don't do it in the best way of with a reed. So lahedya, we can't say the interpretation we just said before. We just wanted to say that why does Reb Meir hold that you take all the 7 days? Because maybe it's the day. You got to get the right day. Tefillah bizmanai mitzvah. He says, no, day 3, day 7, mark that shine. You don't have to do every single day. Okay, so it's not day 3, it's day 4 and day 8. Who cares? As long as you get it 3 and 7, you're okay. It doesn't have to be. So you hold tefillah b'zman lav mitzvah, but you can't save it because we see clearly tefillah b'zman is a mitzvah, and that's why he holds that with the reed. You don't go looking for the reed because we want to get you on the day that you could. That clearly rejects the interpretation we just said. So the Gemara says, Elder, you're right. The kuli alma that according to everyone, lahani tanoy amrina tefillah b'zman mitzvah. You're right. We have to say that not only does Reb Meir hold tefillah b'zman mitzvah, who that's why he holds you spray all the 7 days, but Rabbi Yossi also has to hold like that, as we prove from Masechta Shabbos from that other halacha. So then, what are they disagreeing about regarding if you spray him every one of the 7 days, only day 3 and day 7? I'll tell you. Reb Meir Savar Machin Hazal et Tvila. Their halacha was said regarding Tevila, regarding immersion. Although they're both purification, but they're two different halachas. So Meir says, okay, but you compare. If Tvila requires Bismana, so Hazal, which is a similar type of concept, also requires Bismana. Basically, says, Loi Bakshin, Hazal Tvila. We never made such a comparison to spraying with the paraduma water to the halacha of tabling in the mikvah. That Hazal Bismana is not a mitzvah. And when it says that you have to have day 3 and day 7 regarding being sprayed, all that means to say is that you shouldn't do it earlier than day 3. But you have to have between the first spray and the second spray a period of 4 days. But if you delay your first spray for a long time, Rabbi Yossi doesn't care about that. You could do it in a year from now. But you got to do it 3 and 7. And that's the machlekes between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Of course, everyone holds tefillah b'zman as mitzvah. But the machlekes was, do we compare hazah to tefillah or not? Okay, that explains the first 2 manda amrim. which we said don't necessarily parallel what we thought it was going to parallel regarding the machlekes of Shimon and Yehuda if Tumas Hutra or Duchuyi B'tzibah. No, we say everyone holds Duchuyi B'tzibah because or else you wouldn't have to have any hazal whatsoever. And the machlekes is regarding if a makash hazal l'tefillah. Now we mentioned a third Tana. He differentiated between Yom Kippurim and that of the Parduma. So the Gemara wonders what's the understanding of his opinion. If he holds, like Reb Meir, that you compare the spraying of the Parduma waters to tabling in the mikvah, that it has to be Bizmana, Safel Kaim Yom Kippurim Nami, the name of the Kayin by Yom Kippurim. Why does he say that by Yom Kippurim all you require is day 3 and day 7? What do you mean? Should it have to be all 7 days? Because you got to be Bizmana. And if he doesn't compare the spraying to the tabling, I feel the Kayin HaSav is the Paranami. Then why did he say the Kayin brings the Parduma every single day? But says, where'd you get that? Why you differentiate between the Para and Yom Kippurim? If he holds Bizman as a mitzvah, then both should require 7. If you don't, then neither one should require all 7. Says Gemara, La'im Makish. Truth is, he doesn't compare, and that's why the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippurim only does day 3, day 7, because it doesn't have to be the Hazah Bizmana. But for Kohen HaSav is the Par, regarding the Kohen to bring the Paraduma, the reason why he does it all 7 days is Malabama. As we've said on previous stuff, we do a lot of elevated statuses to the Kohen who burns the Paraduma to make it show that we're very careful with his Tahara, because we're lenient regarding using it for Yom Bloitzim and Libin Shal Tzedukim. And that's why he does all 7 days, but really he holds like that of Rabbi Yesi that you don't have to do more than day 3 and day 7. Now the Gemara, Agav explains that based on what we just said in this Machlekes Tanaim, Kaman Az Lahad Tan Rabban. According to whom is the following brisa like? What does the brisa say? The brisa says, Ein ben Kohen HaServas apart. There's no difference between the Kohen that burns the Paraduma. The Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim to the Kohen Gadol that when what he does with separating before Yom Kippurim, Ella, the only difference is the continues on the base. 2 things. Shezeh Prishasa L'Kedusha. The Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippurim, his quarantining is for sanctity purposes. What does that mean? I mean, he's coming into the Machna Shechina, to the holy camp. He shouldn't be arrogant. He should be separated from all type of levity and frivolity, and he should have a certain ema, a certain trepidation that he separates from people. It gives a time of reflection. People are alone. They realize that it's time for reflection, but it's for kedusha purposes. A way of when Nevi'im, when people with divine inspiration, they separate. They were going this baydis, and that's what the purpose is of the Kohen before Yom Kippur. And his brothers, his kahanim, they could touch him. He would have visitors coming all the time. That was what the prisha was by the Kohen before Yom Kippur. Whereas V'zeh, the Kohen who did the Paraduma, prishas is l'tahara. His quarantine was for a very different purpose. It was for purity, not for sanctity. It was as a stringency for tahara purposes, because again, like we said, since we're lenient regarding making him tummy on that day, to make him a Tvul Yom that we should exclude from what the Sadducees think, that's why they were stringent regarding his tahara. That, okay, we're quarantining you, we're separating you, not to think that you can just become tummy by walking in the street or whatever it is. And therefore, no one's allowed to come to him. His fellow Kama not allowed to touch him. Again, as a way to separate. Those are the 2 differences between Kohen Gadol before the Kippurim and the Kohen that burned the Paraduma. Says the Gemara, come on, who is this Tana like? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you, or your mayor or your basi. Either it's a mayor or a basi, whichever it means, you spray him day 3, day 7, or you spray him all 7 days, but they don't differentiate between Yom Kippurim and the Par. They say that it's either Remeir holds both require all 7 days, or he says no, both only require day 3, day 7. Because the if it's Rechinis Kanaganim, that's not true. It's not only 2 differences. There's also a third difference. Because the Par you spray him all 7 days, and by Yom Kippurim you only spray him day 3 and day 7. And therefore, all that we know, it must be that it couldn't be him. Because he would say a third difference between the 2 cases. Now, Maskul Rabbi Shloimy, he has a question regarding the Manda Amr that said that you have to go ahead and spray all 7 days. We said, why all 7 days? Because we're concerned that maybe the person was tummy from a dead person. You got to spray him day 3 and day 7. Now, we don't know which is day 3, day 7. So, okay, the first 3 days, either one might be day 3. Because day 1 could be day 3, because it could be 3 days ago he became tummy, and this is day 3, and the last 3 days all might be day 7. So the Gemara explains it, and there's a question. There's 1 day that's off. Bishlam Arish, I understand the first day that you're quarantining him, that you spray him, Kashem Shlishi. This might be the 3rd day of when he became tummy. Sheni, day 2, you spray him because Shemesh Shlishi. It also might be day 3. You don't know when he became tummy. Shlishi, day 3 also might be Shemesh Shlishi. Maybe one moment before you quarantined him, he became tummy. So that means day 3 of when you're quarantining is day 3 of his tummy. Now, Chamishi, I understand day 5, Shemesh Shvi. It might be day 7. Because if the first day you quarantined him was day 3 of his tummy, comes out day 5 of his quarantine is day 7 of his purification. So too, Shishi, day 6 of his quarantine, Shemesh Shvi. It might also be day 7 if, let's say, day 2 of his quarantine was really day 3. And Shvi, day 7, I understand, Shemesh Shvi. That might be, let's say, a moment before he was quarantined, he became tummy. So day 3 of his quarantine is really day 3 of his Tahara, and day 7 is day 7. But El Revi, there's one day that's off. Day 4, Lama Le Hazal Klau. Why would you spray on day 4 at all? And as the Gemara explains, Loi B'Shlishi Ikelisruke. You cannot be in doubt that maybe this is day 3 because he was in quarantine already from 4 days ago. It can't be day 3 of his tumah. He obviously did not become tummy from a dead person. And for Loi B'Shvi Ikelisruke, it cannot be day 7 either because if it's day 7 of his tumah, comes out that one day before you quarantined him was day 3 of his tumah. Comes out he didn't get sprayed on day 3 and Hazah Shvi without Shlishi is nothing. So what's the point of spraying on day 4? There's no significance of spraying on day 4. So the Gemara answers, wait a second. Well, Tanech, according to your reasoning, what are you asking? I could ask you back too. Hazah Kol Sheva Meikar, do you really think that we spray him all 7 days? What do you mean, why not? Because for Kaim alone, there's a Gemara Pesachim that tells us, a Mishnah says, the Hazah Shvus, spraying someone to purify him on Shabbos, is an Issa D'Rabban. Now, Shabbos, it doesn't override Shabbos. So, in the Ma'aseh L'Chamim, rather, what do you have to say? Shiva L'Bar Shabbos. When we say we spray them all 7 days, obviously it means besides Shabbos, because it's a Shvus. And we don't do it, it's taking mana, it's like fixing the person, you're not allowed to do that. So he says, you're right. Although he said you do all 7 days, it means besides for day 4. Because we said all 7, but I'll prove to you all 7 doesn't mean all 7, because all 7 doesn't mean Shabbos. So it also doesn't mean day 4 of a separation. Now, interestingly, Amar Rabbi says, Hilke, therefore I'll show you interesting concept. Based on this, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippur. We said there's 2 times that we quarantine. One Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippur, and one before he does the Paraduma. So the Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, the Loi B'Didan Tali Milsa, when he's going to quarantine, doesn't depend on us. What do you mean? It'll be Kfi D'Yarcha Tali Milsa. It depends on when is Rosh Chodesh. When is Rosh Hashanah? Is when the month is going to start. But Tlasa B'Tishrei B'Elav Fushay. On the 3rd of Tishrei is when he has to go ahead. And Tzem Gedaliah is when he has to go ahead and separate himself because that's 7 days before Yom Kippur. It's always on the 10th of Tishrei. Has nothing to do with us. So whenever the 3rd of Tishrei comes out, that's when you quarantine him. And even though it's not going to be that day 4 of his quarantine is going to fall on Shabbos, because it's whenever 7 days before is, it's going to come out that there's 2 days of his 7 days that he's not going to get sprayed. His 4th day, whichever one that is, and Shabbos, because Shabbos you don't spray. Because we have no choice. We can't decide when we're going to separate him. In contrast, when we're quarantining, the Kohen is going to burn the Paraduma. Time, it's dependent on us. There's no set time. We could choose whenever we want to make the new Paraduma waters to pick whatever day we want to. So therefore, we're going to start the quarantine on the Wednesday. So that his day 4 should be on Shabbos, and we shouldn't lose 2 days. Instead, we want to lose 1 day. That's why we're going to pick it always going to be on a Wednesday, so that we get only losing 1 day. Let it fall out on the same day of Shabbos. That's what's going to be specifically by that when we're burning the Paraduma. The Kohen is doing that.
So the master, nobody ever got sprinkled
Shlishi, no, you can get Shlishi and Shvi. Forget, day 4 is never going to be Shlishi and Shvi.
I'm saying on a regular case of Shlishi, whatever. So you always have 1 Shabbos in between.
Oh, it means it could be, meaning
it could be.
Yeah, it could be that he didn't get exactly. It could be.
You do what?
What?
So what do you do then?
I mean, if day 7 is.
If day 3 or 7 is Shabbos.
No, not day 3. We don't know which is day 3 and 7. Well, it is a mile of Alma. It's not like we know. You want to say, hey, you want to say outside that it's going to be Shabbos. What would you do then If are you going to add another day? Right. Right. It's a good question. Well, they're not, because it's not really. It's like a chomer ba'alma. It's not really that we really know. And you're right. Then he's not going to get it. It's something that we're not going to do it on that day if it's on the Shabbos. So the Gemara goes back to the halach of the Mishnah that said that we separate the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur l'lishkas parhedron. So the Gemara explains where we got this name, this lishkas parhedron, that we separate the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippurim. So the Gemara says, time we learn the Brayso Rabbi Yehuda says lishkas parhedron also that they have a machlekes regarding the name. You think it was called the chamber of parhedron, which parhedron means to say the pekidi hamelech, the appointees of the king. It actually was called a different name. It was Balvati means like the princes. It was called Lishkas Hasarim. So how are you calling it Lishkas Parhedron? So the Gemara says, no, interesting. There's an interesting story regarding it. Ella rather, Betchila in the beginning, meaning all the days of Shimon HaTzadik, who lived a long time, Lishkas Balvati. Then they called it the chamber of the honored princes. Now the problem was in the second base of Mikdash, as we learn on the next daf, the Kahanim in the second base of Mikdash, how did they become the Kahanim Gedolim? They gave them guilt. They bribed their way in. That's how they became the Kohen Gadol in the Hashmonaim dynasty. So every 12 months there was a new Kohen Gadol because they were wicked and they wouldn't live out the year. So they would have to place a new Kohen Gadol. Now every single Kohen Gadol that became the Kohen Gadol, he would demolish that chamber and he would build a new one, nicer one than the first one, and he would call it on his name. So it comes in every single year. It was a new lishka. Kiparhedron halalu, like these appointees, that they get the king. He changes these appointees every single year. So therefore they changed the name. So lishkas parhedron, you know what I'm saying? Like as if like there's appointees that they get voted to the board just for 12 months. This is what these Kahan Gedolim are. It used to be for the honored princes. This is where the Kahan Gedolim would go. But now that the Kohen Gadol is someone that is not making out in the year, it's just like the Parhedron. We don't make it out in the year. Now, once we introduce Parhedron, the Gemara brings another halacha, which at the end will explain what is Parhedron. Although it's a very unrelated halacha. It's not a halacha. We learned about it in the Mishnah and the Mesechta Yomai. Hanach Toimin, the bakers who purchase produce from the Amma Aretz to make bread and sell it in the street, in the marketplace. So the halach is the Mishnah, the sages do not require those bakers to separate Meiser Sheni from the Demai to bring up the Meiser Sheni. Like usually when you buy Demai, you don't know if you took off the appropriate types. You don't have to separate Meiser Sheni to bring it to Yerushalayim. Ella, only thing that required the bakers to do was Trumas Meiser, which Trumas Meiser is 1 out of 100 because Trumas Meiser is a tenth that you give to the Levi. And then the 10th of that has to go to the Kohen. So that 100th, because it's a 10th of a 10th, has to go, that the baker has to separate and give to the Kohen. B'chala, and Chala has to give it to the Kohen. Now, this is a leniency that they did specifically for the bakers. All other people, that's not a baker, actually has a requirement when he buys grain from Amma Aretz, has to separate Ma'aser Sheni of Demai and bring it to Yerushalayim. Now, Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Ani, what the person who buys from the Amaretz would do, he would take off Ma'aser Sheni and Ma'aser Ani, but he wouldn't give it to the Levi, to the Ani. He would just keep it for himself. Now, we're talking about a baker that's a righteous person, and because he sells all the time, they were lenient on him that he doesn't have to separate Ma'aser Sheni of Demai to bring it to Yerushalayim or to Redeem, as we're going to shortly explain, as the Gemara explains. I understand why they didn't require him to separate Truma Gedolah, which is that Truma that goes to the Kohen, the first Truma, around 1/50th. Because the time we're in the Brayso, as we continue to have Testament Aleph, that Lafisha Shalach, because the Yechanan Kohen Gadol, he's the one that made this initial Gezerah on Demai, the Gemara brings in Seiktav and Testament Aleph, he sent B'chol Gevul Yisrael throughout the boundaries of the Jewish people. But Shein Mafrish, and he saw that they weren't separating the Amaratzim, they weren't separating Trumas and Maises, El Truma Gedolah. The one thing that they were giving was the Truma Gedolah. So I understand why they wouldn't require this baker to separate Truma Gedolah, because that they never had a problem with Amaratzim. That Amaratzim were always separated. Now, so too, Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Ani Namilai, that first type that goes to the Levi, and the poor man's type on year 3 and 6, I understand why that also we didn't require the baker to separate, because of the concept of Mitzvah Mechaver Levaraya. if someone's trying to collect something from his friend, the onus of proof is on him. So therefore, from the moment that this baker would separate and make it not tell anymore, the only has a suffix if it's stealing from the Levi and the Ani, which we don't know. I don't know if the Amma went and separate Shumas and Maisa or not. You Levi, you only want to tell me that he didn't? Bring it out, bring proof. You don't have proof, so therefore, I don't have to give it to you. Now, whereas by Trumas Meiser, which is, again, in the first Meiser that we said you have to give it to the Kohen, that's for a different reason. Not because of theft, but because of the prohibition. There's a death penalty if someone eats Trumas Meiser. So it's very simply, you have to give your Trumas Meiser, which is Meiser from Meiser, you have to give that to the Kohen, because if you eat it, and he didn't take off Trumas Meiser, then you chayav misa for that. In contrast, by the Levi and the Ani, he could say, bring a raya that it didn't. There's no isser. It's only a monetary concept. If a monetary concept, you say mitzvah mechamel of a raya. Now, but the problem the Gemara has is elamaisa shame. So I understand again, Truma Gedayla, they give. I understand regarding Trumas Maisa, we said you do have to give because that's isser. And I understand why Maisa Rishon and Maisa Ani you don't have to give because of mitzvah mechal of a raya. My question is elamaisa shame, but the second type, which is on the first and the second and the fourth and the fifth years of the Shemitah cycle. Nifreshu v'nisku v'nechel b'Yerushalayim. I understand why don't we require him to separate and bring it up and eat in Yerushalayim, because there's an issur there too of l'suchel echel b'sharecha. Now that he Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim, so we should require him to separate Ma'aser Sheni to fix his temple, and he's not losing anything because he himself is eating Yerushalayim. So it's not like monetarily that we're requiring him. So bring it up. Why don't we require him to separate and bring up to Yerushalayim? So Amar Ulam, the reason is, and this is why this halach is coming in from this word mitoich shepar hedron halol. Because of these parhedron that we're going to shortly explain who they are, they hit the bakers from year to year. And that is when they're appointed, the new people that are in charge, they try to find different ways of collecting money when they take over the post. They're going to say, we're going to raise taxes, we're going to find ways of collection. So they hit the bakers because it's a new post that's every single year. And they tell the baker, sell cheap, because we need that people should have revenue to have. So therefore the Rabbanon would not matriach the baker, meaning the whole halacha of Dubai is rabbinic law. So regarding the bakers, they were lenient and they relied on the fact that we say really roiv amaratzim are ma'asrim. Most ignoramuses, they do take ma'aseh. There were a minority that don't, so therefore we made the gzeir of Demai. But regarding the bakers, we were lenient simply because already they're the pressure on the bakers to sell the goods very cheaply, and they're bleeding here the money. We can't require them also to separate another tenth and take it up to Yerushalayim. Which the Gemara says, my parhedron is pursei. These again, like we said, the Pekidi HaMelech, the appointees of the king, that he's new to his post. Every single year was the new appointment. So this guy came in, he's all fresh, he comes in, he says, you guys get better selling this and that. And because of that, that's what we're leaning again, that's why we brought in this halacha to show that the Parhedron are the appointees that come in once a year, and that's why they changed the name Lishkas Parhedron, because the Khan Gedalim were also suddenly coming every once a year because of the fact that they were dying, they weren't making out the years, and we learned on the next stuff. Something to discuss in today's Daf Yomi Daf Ches. We said, let's say the machlekes of Shimon Yehuda, if Tuma is Hudra B'tzibur or Duchuyi B'tzibur, it's like a machlekes Tanaim. What's a machlekes Tanaim? We find that Remeir holds that Yom Kippur and by the Paradim, we'd spray him all 7 days, whereas Rabbi Yasi held that no, only day 3 and day 7. So the Gemara says, as I have here in the yellow, that okay, that's the machlekes. Remeir holds Tuma is Duchuyi is only set aside. So you have to have a tahara mal yasa bismana, because you gotta make sure, because it's really duchuya. So you spray them all 7 days to make sure you're gonna get day 3 and day 7. And B'yisi says no, it's hutra, yeah, it's hutra. So the Gemara rejects it. It says, why are you spraying them at all? Why would you do even day 3, day 7? So the Gemara says a different shot, which is in the purple over here. It says no. We may hold tefillah bismana as a mitzvah. You have to get the right day. So you gotta do all 7 days to get the right day. Rabbi holds, no, it's duchuya, you're right, but the thing is, it's lav mitzvah. You don't have to get it in that day itself. So although he agrees that it's duchuya, but it's enough to do day 3, 7, whichever it is, it's not going to be before day 3, day 7, and it doesn't have to be the first time around. The problem is the Gemara rejects this because it can't be. Because we have them in the different halacha that if, let's say, he has the name of God written on his flesh, we say he holds Yard B'Tribal Kedarkai. Why? Why doesn't he have to go get a read? Because he might miss the day. Oh, you mean he holds Tefillah B'Zman as a mitzvah? So how could we say that the reason why he holds only day 37 is because it's love mitzvah? So then, like I have here in the light blue, that no, the machlekes really between him and Rameir is if you makish hazah l'tefillah. If he holds loy makshin hazah l'tefillah, therefore you don't have to do in the first opportunity. Whereas Rameir holds makshin hazah l'tefillah, and therefore just like tefillah b'zman is mitzvah, so too is the hazah. Now, what's the understanding of the third man that he holds the parah has to be all 7 days, and Yom Kippur on day 3 and day 7? Because the truth is, really, he holds like Rabbi Yasi, that we're not makish hazol tefillah. But by parah is a mile ba'alma, as we've said many times. It's just an elevated status. That's why you do it every single day. Now, the Gemara just pointed out that obviously he's not like the Bryce that says that the only difference between parah and Yom Kippur is if the prisha is l'kedusha or l'tahara, and if his brothers could touch him, because he holds there would be a third one. Would be if you do it all 7 days this spring, or you do it on day 3-7. So obviously that could either be like a Meir Beis, but he obviously cannot be like him. Then we said, wait a second. What do you mean you spree all 7 days? The first 3 days might be day 3. The last 3 days might be day 7. But there's a 4-day gap. So day 4, what would be the purpose of springing day 4? Day 4 can't be day 3 because then it would be. You already quarantined him already 4 days. He couldn't have been tummy. It can't be day 7 because then it would be day 3 would be the day before you separate him. So what's the point? So he says you're right. We didn't mean all 7 days, and I'll prove he doesn't mean all 7 days because Shabbos Yosef don't spray him. And therefore said the Gemara because of that when we have the opportunity by the Kohen that burns the para, we're going to separate him specifically on a Wednesday, so that his day 4 is going to fall out on Shabbos. That we don't lose 2 days, only going to lose 1 day. Whereas we have no choice. We have no way of creating that. Now we said, why is it called Lishkas Pahedrin? So because what happened ended up being in the second base of Mikdash, they come to them once a year. They were being changed. They weren't living through the year because they weren't righteous people. They were wicked people. And where do we find this terminology of Pahedrin of Bekidei Melech that they were switched once a year? We find by the baker when he purchases the mai that we only require him to separate Trumas Meiser and Chal. We said Truma we don't require because Amaratzim they separate Truma. Even always it was like that. Meiser Rishon Meiser only we don't require him because Meiser Melavaraya. So it's a monetary law. It's no saying I could eat Meiser Rishon, I could eat Meiser only. Prove to me that it's chayv. And Meiser Sheni we said because the Pahedrin would hit the bakers from 12 months to 12 months because these were new appointees and they said sell cheap. They were bleeding and can't make them to take another 10, and that's why the Chum were leaning on the Nachton in contrast to a regular individual, and that's where we see that the concept of the Pahedrin was those who Bekidei Melech switched from every 12 months. Thank you to any time for hosting us.